Oh, it's Vanessa Love. Alright, thanks for watching. If you are new to the channel, thank you. If you are someone who has watched this channel before, my skin is splotchy. I have had a couple of days of really bad food allergies for no good reason, and the recent one has resulted in me, oh, I don't know if you can see that, resulted in me having, nope, you cannot see that, in having hives. Yeah, it's one of the worst that I've had for like the last 20 years, so that's cool. Yeah, it's wonderful. Like, I'm having all sorts of like really bad, yeah, you really can't see it. Anyway, it's splotchy. I know it's splotchy, and my face is doing whatever it's doing. So if I look a little off, it's because I'm allergic to so many foods, man. So many foods, and now I have to figure out which one entirely it was. It's not like I just don't eat too much away from like my norm, so I'm like, yeah. Anyway, you tuned in today for something else. Alright, so I wanted to talk about antisocial personality disorder, or what they used to call psychopathology, or psychopath, or sociopath. So this is very specific. It's why I wanted to educate the population, about what this is, so that you have a better idea, and it's not just from, as I said, my criticism of Katie Morton, was that she said that when you're around a sociopath or whatever, that you feel icky. And I think that actually comes from people who have been like abused before, because they know what it's like to feel manipulated. They know what it's like to agree to something that they didn't necessarily agree to, and that's what makes people feel icky. But I do have to say that there are people who absolutely love being around people who have psychopathology or antisocial personality disorder, because they are so interesting, and they do tend to be very charming. I knew someone like this in high school. When I disconnected from that person, I knew someone who knew that person, and they were like, yeah, so we were all driving drunk, and I'm like, oh god, what's this story? They were driving drunk, and the person who I disconnected from, they got a DUI at age 20 with a 16-year-old in the car. And I mean, choices. So yeah, there are people who really do fawn over these people who have antisocial personality disorder, and I don't think that you can just kind of just define them as icky. The interactions have to be exploitive and all of that, and also superficial. It's a very weird thing. So let me go over the official diagnosis, and I will be reading from this. Isn't that lovely? And this, I read from this also because not only does it have the criteria, I haven't done my nails, I apologize. It also has all of the other things, such as prevalence. This is actually diagnosed with, in the regular population, from 0.2% to 3.3%, unless that population is males in prison, and then that goes up to 70%. That makes sense? It is actually something, it says, it can be up to greater than 70% in most severe samples of males with alcoholic use disorder, and from substance abuse clinics, prisons, and other forensic settings. That's what it says right there. And then it's also like development, risk factors, which is mostly urban and low-income areas. So, yeah, all sorts of cool little things in there that are good to know, especially with other things, which I will get to in other videos. Alright, so diagnostic criteria. Pervasive pattern. A pattern of disregard for and violation of the rights of others occurring since age 15, as indicated by 3 or more of the following. So they only have to have 3 or more of these ones, and then this is criteria B, this is criteria C, and this is criteria D, as you can see. So like this one has the multiple choice, but these other 2 have to be met before you can get this diagnosis. Okay? All right. So, failure to conform to social norms with respect to lawful behaviors as indicated by repeated performing acts that are ground for arrest. Doesn't say that the person is arrested, it's just that they could be arrested for what they're doing. Like, want to make that clear, because they also made it clear. Especially when they, in this like little paragraph, well, not little paragraph, long paragraph about diagnostic features. Deceitful, as indicated by repeated lying, use of aliases or conning others into for personal profit or pleasure. The next one, impulsivity or failure to plan ahead. The next one, irritability or aggressiveness, as indicated by repeated physical fights or assaults. The next one, reckless disregard, there we go, for safety of self or others. Consistent irresponsibility, as indicated by repeated failure to sustain consistent work behavior or honor financial obligations. The next one, lack of remorse, as indicated by being indifferent to or rationalizing having hurt, mistreated, or stolen from another. They talk about this in things like saying, oh, that person, life's unfair, the loser had it coming, like, you know, losers deserve to lose, those type of things. So criteria B, the individual is at least 18 years old, so this has to be like as an adult, right? The next one, so this has to be met. There is evidence of conduct disorder with onset before age 15. I'll go into that. And then the next one that has to be met, the occurrence of antisocial behavior is not exclusive during the course of schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. Also, it says that because of the substance use disorder stuff, that the behavior has to be separate from like alcohol use, and you can see that with the conduct disorder. Now, conduct disorder, they said, involves repetitive and persistent pattern of behavior in which the basic rights of others or major age-appropriate societal norms or rules are violated. Specific behavioral characteristics fall into 4 categories. Aggression to people and animals. So a lot of people will say, oh, well, if someone was trying to harm their cats when they were younger, because cats, for some reason, are weirdly like the target of people who have antisocial personality disorder, that is like an indicator of conduct disorder. Like they've seen that repeatedly, or like previous therapists have seen that repeatedly. Destruction of property, deceitfulness of theft, and serious violation of rules. So, as you can see, pretty serious there. Let's see. Was there anything else I was going to say about that? No, I said the thing about abuse. I said the thing about, like, I knew someone who had this, who I suspect had this, and I cut them out of my life fairly early. And, still thinking about this now, like the person that had the DUI, the person who had the DUI at age 20, like, yeah, they're like, I still hear stories about them, and I wouldn't be surprised if the next step in their relationship is child abuse, because I've heard that they were not very nice to kids for a long time, and so I'm like, yeah, that's something, I think I actually accidentally mixed this up with narcissistic personality disorder, which does have the charming part, but what I was reading as far as narcissistic personality disorder, and the difference is that antisocial personality disorder tends to have more aggression, and I do know someone one time who had this actually before the age of 18, which is shouldn't be, but like maybe at the time, because maybe I think it was the 80s, it wasn't separate. And the person was like, I don't really care if I have to go to jail again. And I was like, other people would really take on the threat of jail as like, something to not do what they're doing. But he was saying that he had that diagnosis because his mom didn't come to a parent-teacher conference and he threw chairs. And that's how he got that. It was probably a lot more. It's probably what led up to the parent-teacher meeting, as well as whatever other behaviors. A little bit of history that I know about that person is that they were in urban low-income areas, and the city that they lived in California is still bankrupt. Like, they're trying to do all that they can, that city anyway, and that they were in a lot of different settings when they were younger, so not always at home, sometimes with grandparents, and early trauma. So it's all kind of messed up in that world. So with narcissistic personality disorder, it says that just they have sentences for each one. So for antisocial, it says disregard for and violation of the rights of others. And for narcissistic personality disorder, it says a pattern of grandiosity, need for admiration, and the lack of empathy. And I can see how those two might be confused. Obviously, like in my brain, they're a little bit up there. But it is very clear that antisocial personality disorder and narcissistic personality are different. Like, I think it's the lack of empathy and manipulation that happens in both that make it very difficult for people to like feel comfortable around people with either diagnosis. The other thing is that what I was reading earlier about like cluster B, because that is called cluster B personality disorder, is they appear dramatic, emotional, or erratic. So histrionic personality disorder is also in the cluster B. Cluster A is people with these disorders appear odd or eccentric, and then cluster C is they're most likely appearing anxious or fearful. So it's definitely an interesting little thing there. Luckily, in private practice, not too many personality disorders in general, because especially with cluster B, because they don't feel like they're the issue. They feel like, that's what I was going to say. They don't feel like they're the issue, so they don't want to go to therapy. I know some people who have narcissistic personality disorder. When you give them information in session, they'll take that information, but they'll only think that it's for other people. It's not really for them. I have had maybe 5, let's say, out of 300 or 400 clients, and I'm like trying to think. Like, I know 2 of them stayed long term, 1 of them only stayed a couple of sessions, and 1 of them was very focused on their ex-wife and how their ex-wife had the personality disorder, and he was reading everything he could about everything that she had done to him because he was a victim, he felt, in that situation, but also he very much had narcissistic personality disorder. I don't know if he would ever admit it. And one of the things that I have come across in a lot of the therapist forums is that therapists who have clients who have narcissistic personality disorder usually don't tell them. They just try to kind of deal with the trauma and that type of stuff because they don't want to, like, I guess it's very difficult. I know one of the clients who had narcissistic personality disorder decided to argue with me about it and was insistent that even though, like, they fit the criteria, they didn't feel that they fit that criteria. And it was really interesting to have someone fight me on it. Like, other people who get diagnosis or, you know, certain diagnoses, they'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm not crazy. I'm so glad there's a name for this and I can do something about it. But this person was like, I don't, like, that's not actually what I'm doing, and all of this other stuff. And it was really funny. And with all of them, anytime they won an award, it was brought up like repeatedly in the conversations. But also, a couple of them told me that they lied during session, which therapy is about being honest. If you're not, like, it's okay with me if, like, there's certain issues that you don't want to bring up, but, like, at least be honest with yourself about them. And I don't know if that's necessarily true for the people who have narcissistic personality disorder, because they just don't, yeah. And there are a couple of people in the YouTube community who I think might have narcissistic personality disorder. I really do. And they're not going to get anything out of therapy. With, like, personality disorders in general, and especially cluster B, it is very tough for people to, one, focus on themselves, but also feel like they've done anything wrong. With antisocial personality disorder, there's not much that you can do that will make them feel remorse. Like, you really can't do any of, like, the things that you would normally do to be like, but don't you feel, like, sad about that? Don't, like, regretful that you made that choice? No, they don't. So there is a lot to it, and it is unfortunate. It really is unfortunate. Anyway, I hope this was helpful for you, and I will talk with you guys soon.